For centuries, Africa has been told what to be, what to trade, what to believe. Its lands have been mapped by foreign hands, its leaders dictated by outside interests, and its future scripted by those who see it as nothing more than a resource mine. But something is changing. A new movement is rising, a movement that doesn't ask for permission, a movement that doesn't wait for approval. And at the center of it stands Ghana. Ghana has always been a nation of firsts, the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence, the birthplace of Kwame Nkrumah's dream, a self-reliant, united Africa. But decades after independence, that dream was stolen, diluted by foreign influence, economic dependency, and military entanglements that serve interests far beyond Africa's borders. And then, a shift, a moment of defiance. John Mahama rises to power, not just as a leader, but as a symbol. His victory is more than a political event. It is a declaration, a statement that Ghana will no longer be a playground for foreign powers, a promise that Africa will dictate its future. But words alone won't free a nation, and Mahama knows that sovereignty comes at a cost. His first move? A direct challenge to the West, one that would send shockwaves across the globe. But what is Ghana doing? Let's find out. It all starts with Mahama's victory in recent elections. The morning after the election, Ghana woke up to more than just a new leader. It woke up to a new chapter in history. The streets were alive with celebration, but beneath the cheers and waving flags, something deeper was unfolding. This was not just another election. This was a message to Africa, a message to the world. For decades, Ghana had been caught in the delicate balance between sovereignty and foreign influence. Leaders came and went, some promising change, others maintaining the status quo. But Mahama's return to power was different. This time, the stakes were higher. This time, it wasn't just about governance. It was about rewriting Ghana's place in the world. His victory sent a clear and undeniable signal. The old order is shaking. To the West, Mahama's return wasn't just a political shift, it was a strategic threat. For years, Ghana had been a stable partner in their playbook, a country willing to engage diplomatically, to accept aid, military assistance, and economic partnerships that always came with invisible strings attached. But the world had changed. Africa had changed. In the past, foreign powers controlled African nations through direct colonial rule. When that ended, they adapted, using debt, military agreements, and political interference to maintain their grip. Ghana was no exception. And yet, here was Mahama, a leader unafraid to push back. His return to power signified something dangerous to those who benefited from Africa's reliance on Western policies. A country, rich in resources and strategic influence, choosing its path. This election, in many ways, was a referendum on Ghana's sovereignty. It was a test of whether the people would choose a leader aligned with the West's expectations or one who would chart a different course. The answer? Loud and clear. Mahama's win was not just his own, it was a win for a rising Africa that refuses to be dictated to. But why are we talking about his win? What does Mahama's leadership represent? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Leadership is about more than policies. It is about perception. To many in Ghana and across the continent, Mahama represents an Africa that is done waiting for permission. He stands as a reminder that Ghana's independence was not won through negotiations, but through the defiant will of its people. His election symbolizes a rejection of Western paternalism. No more external forces treating Ghana as an experiment for democracy on their terms. A push for real economic independence, not just reforms that satisfy foreign investors, but policies that put Ghana first. A demand for respect on the global stage. Ghana is no longer a junior partner in world affairs. It is a sovereign nation with its priorities, and this shift is not just about Ghana. The rest of Africa is watching. Elections in one country rarely make waves beyond their borders. But this was different. Ghana is often seen as a political barometer for the continent. a nation whose democratic processes influence regional trends. Mahama's win sent shockwaves across Africa, where nations have long struggled to balance local governance with foreign pressures. Countries in West Africa, the Sahel, and beyond have been moving away from foreign control in recent years. The elections in Ghana served as confirmation that this momentum was growing. If Ghana, a country historically seen as stable and pro-West, could choose a leader advocating for self-determination, what would stop others from doing the same? The message was clear. Africa is no longer accepting leaders who prioritize foreign interests over their people. The era of puppet governments is fading. A new generation of leadership is emerging, one that values sovereignty over subservience. Ghana had just set the precedent. With every power shift, there are winners and losers, and Mahama's victory left some deeply unsettled. For Western nations, Ghana has always been a key regional ally, a country they could depend on to support their diplomatic and military strategies. But Mahama's return signaled uncertainty. Would Ghana still be willing to cooperate on military bases? Would it continue economic agreements that benefited foreign powers over locals? Would Mahama strengthen ties with other anti-Western African leaders? The uncertainty sent diplomats and analysts scrambling. Political think tanks in Washington, London, and Brussels were already drafting reports on what this meant for Western interests in Africa. The truth was simple. Ghana was changing, and there was no stopping it. For too long, Ghana's policies have been shaped by external forces, trade agreements, foreign aid, and military alliances that benefited outsiders more than its people. Mahama's election represents a return to something deeper, a return to Ghana's true identity. This is the Ghana of Nkrumah, the Ghana that refused to bow, the Ghana that dared to dream of an Africa standing on its own. But dreams are only as strong as the will to fight for them. And Mahama's biggest battles? They are just beginning. Because challenging the status quo comes at a price. Will Mahama succeed in his vision, or will the forces of the old world fight back harder than ever before? The answers will shape not just Ghana's future, but the fate of an entire continent. Now, let's come to the decision that Mahama made, which made everyone talk about him. It was a decision no one saw coming. A move that sent shockwaves from Accra to Washington. John Mahama stood before the nation and declared what many had whispered but never dared to say outright. Ghana would no longer host U.S. military forces. For years, American troops had maintained a presence in Ghana under the guise of security cooperation. Now, Mahama had made it clear that era was over. This wasn't just a diplomatic shift, it was a direct challenge to the post-Cold War system that had allowed Western powers to use Africa as a strategic chessboard. And the world was watching. But why was the U.S. military in Ghana in the first place? Officially, the U.S. military's presence in Ghana was part of a broader security partnership. On paper, the mission was simple: help strengthen Ghana's ability to fight insurgency, respond to regional threats, and build a modern defense force. But the reality, far more complex. The U.S. has a long history of embedding itself within foreign militaries, not just to provide assistance, but to gain influence over key decision-making processes. The American military doctrine isn't just about fighting wars. It's about ensuring that allies remain dependent on U.S. military hardware, intelligence, and training. In Ghana's case, that meant access to strategic military installations that could serve U.S. interests in West Africa, intelligence sharing agreements that prioritized Washington's agenda over Ghana's sovereignty. A growing reliance on U.S. military aid created a cycle where Ghana's defense infrastructure became tied to foreign support. Then, there was the bigger picture, the Pentagon's long-term interest in securing a military foothold across the African continent. Since the early 2000s, the United States has expanded its military operations in Africa under the umbrella of AFRICOM, United States Africa Command. Officially, AFRICOM's role is to promote stability, counter insurgent threats, and support African militaries. But in practice, it has functioned as a tool for military dominance, placing U.S. forces in key locations across the continent while ensuring that African nations never develop truly independent security capabilities. As Mahama saw it, Ghana had a choice: continue playing by Washington's rules or reclaim full control of its defense policies. To Mahama, the issue wasn't just about foreign troops, it was about who controlled Ghana's future. The presence of U.S. forces meant more than just soldiers stationed in military compounds. It meant Ghana was part of a larger system of geopolitical power plays, one where its national security was shaped by foreign interests. And the consequences were real. Ghana had limited autonomy in regional security matters. The government was expected to align with U.S. foreign policy, whether it benefited Ghana or not. The presence of U.S. troops made Ghana a potential target in conflicts that weren't its own. But the biggest issue? Ghana's growing inability to make sovereign defense decisions without Western approval. To Mahama, this was unacceptable. He concluded that Ghana's security should be dictated by Ghana, not Washington, not Brussels, not London. Almost immediately, Mahama's announcement was met with panic in Washington. The U.S. had spent years securing its military influence in West Africa, and now, one of its most stable partners was pulling away. This was not just about Ghana. This was about the domino effect it could trigger. If Ghana expelled U.S. troops, what would stop other African nations from following suit? Western officials scrambled to frame Mahama's decision as reckless and short-sighted. Analysts warned that Ghana was putting itself at risk, suggesting that without U.S. support, the country would be vulnerable to insurgency, instability, and economic repercussions. Some even suggested that Mahama was playing into the hands of foreign adversaries, a clear attempt to link his decision to the growing influence of China and Russia in Africa. But Mahama remained firm. Across the continent, Mahama's move was seen not as a risk, but as a bold assertion of African sovereignty. For years, countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger had taken similar steps, rejecting foreign military dominance in favor of homegrown security solutions. Now Ghana was joining the movement. This was more than just one country telling the U.S. to leave. This was a declaration that Africa would no longer be a passive participant in global military affairs. It was a statement that African security should be handled by Africans. Military partnerships should be equitable, not exploitative. The era of foreign troops on African soil must come to an end. What comes next? With U.S. troops set to withdraw, Ghana now faces a crucial challenge: how to build a truly independent defense system. Mahama's government has already hinted at new security strategies, including strengthening regional military alliances within Africa, investing in homegrown defense infrastructure instead of relying on foreign aid, and partnering with nations that respect Ghana's sovereignty rather than those who see it as a strategic outpost. The road ahead will not be easy. Washington will not forget this. Western institutions may attempt to undermine Ghana's economy, push negative narratives in the media, or use diplomatic pressure to bring Mahama back in line. But one thing is certain: Ghana has made its choice. It has chosen sovereignty over subjugation, independence over interference, a future written by Ghanaians, for Ghanaians. And now, the question remains: will others follow? Africa was never meant to be divided. The artificial borders that now separate its nations were not drawn by its people, but by colonial powers that saw the continent as nothing more than land to be carved up and exploited. The result? A fractured Africa, where countries compete rather than collaborate, and where foreign powers continue to pull the strings of governments that should have long been independent. But a new vision is emerging, one that seeks to undo centuries of division and reclaim Africa's rightful place on the world stage. At the heart of this movement is Ghana's leader, John Mahama. His vision is not just about Ghana, it is about Africa as a whole. A united Africa, a self-sufficient Africa, an Africa that no longer relies on the West to define its future. To achieve that, Mahama is calling for something bold: African unity. For decades, Africa's greatest minds have dreamed of self-reliance. Leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, and Patrice Lumumba spoke of an Africa that controls its resources, dictates its policies, and stands on equal footing with the rest of the world. Yet, despite independence movements sweeping across the continent, economic and political independence remained a distant illusion. Foreign control never really ended. It just changed form. African countries gained flags and anthems, but their economies were still tied to colonial-era currencies. They gained presidents and parliaments, but their policies were still dictated by foreign institutions like the IMF and World Bank. They gained constitutions, but their true sovereignty remained in question as foreign military bases ensured Western powers retained influence. Mahama sees this for what it is, a continuation of neocolonialism, and his vision is simple. Africa must break free. But how? Again, unity. Pan-Africanism has been little more than an idealistic slogan, a concept discussed at summits but rarely put into action. Mahama wants to change that. His plan focuses on three core pillars: economic independence, resource control, and political and military unity. Each of these steps is a direct challenge to the status quo. For instance, Mahama is pushing for Africa to stop using foreign-controlled currencies like the CFA franc, a relic of French colonial rule that still determines the fate of 14 African nations. Instead, he envisions a pan-African monetary system that puts African governments in charge of their economies. He is also advocating for continental energy and infrastructure projects, ensuring that Africa builds for itself, not for foreign corporations. Roads, railways, and power plants should serve African industries, not foreign extractive operations. But perhaps Mahama's boldest move is his call for a stronger African security network. At the heart of Mahama's Pan-African vision is a simple but powerful belief: Africa should own its wealth. For centuries, Africa has been the richest continent in natural resources, yet it remains one of the poorest in economic terms. The reason? Its resources have always been controlled by foreign hands. Mahama has called for African nations to end exploitative trade agreements that allow Western corporations to extract minerals, oil, and agricultural products for next to nothing, while African economies see little benefit. He is also pushing for nationalizing key industries, so profits remain within Africa, building local refining plants so raw materials are turned into high-value products within the continent, and strengthening intra-African trade to ensure that African economies depend on each other rather than relying on Europe or the US. But changing the economic order comes with risks. Many African leaders who have tried to break free from Western economic dominance have faced coups, assassinations, or economic sabotage. So the question remains, can Mahama's vision survive the pushback? He is standing firm. All he needs is African unity, because if he archives that, nothing can beat Africa. Now we know one thing. Ghana's transformation is not just about one nation. It is about the awakening of an entire continent. For decades, Africa has been trapped in a cycle of foreign influence, economic dependence, and political submission. It has been treated as a land of resources rather than a land of power. Its governments have been pressured to serve external interests rather than their people. But today, that is changing. With John Mahama at the helm, Ghana is making a statement to the world. Africa will no longer be controlled from the outside. By rejecting foreign military dominance, Ghana is setting a new standard for African sovereignty. By prioritizing economic self-sufficiency, it is proving that Africa does not need Western approval to thrive. By championing Pan-Africanism, Ghana is igniting a movement that is spreading across the continent. This is no longer just an idea, it is happening. And the world is taking notice. But history has shown that movements like this do not come without opposition. The real danger is staying in chains. Ghana's decision to take back control is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of restoration, a return to what Africa was always meant to be, a continent that governs itself, that shapes its destiny, that dictates its future. And that future is no longer a distant dream. It is unfolding right now. Do you think anything can stop Africa? Let us know in the comment section. Will Africa unite when it's the only thing they need the most? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video.